Neil Pasricha, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Hi, John. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, man, sometimes I meet our guests because I read their book. Sometimes it's just someone who reaches out to us and I'm moved by their story. Sometimes I meet these folks in airports or book signing lines or whatever it might be. And then occasionally, when I'm really, really, really lucky, I get to be in the back row of a speaking audience and someone's working up front with a microphone. And I'm so moved by their story that at some point I write down in my notes, gotta bring them in. And Neil, that's what I wrote down as I was listening to you speak in Texas about a year ago, man. So welcome in to our family, man. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And the feeling is very mutual. I spoke before you, and it was real lucky I did because you shook that room like an unbelievably intense amount. People were standing, people were crying. I remember thinking afterwards, I was like, first of all, gotta bring her in, gotta bring him in. And also, I was thinking, thank goodness I went first. I would not be able to go after this guy. You were so good, man. It was so nice to see you and me down in Texas. And thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Listen, we're like the fanboy club right now of one another. And here's the cool thing for those who tune in for the entire episode, they're going to join the fan club of you as well because they're going to love your heart and your story and your ideas and your ideals, man. So when you bump into someone in an airport and they say, "Your name's Neil, huh? What do you do?" How do you
Yeah.
respond to that these days?
I usually say I'm a writer. I just sort of stop with that. But if someone probes a little further, I might say, I think, write, and speak about intentional living, how to live a good life. And I got into that because my mom is from Nairobi, Kenya. My dad is from Amritsar, India. They had an arranged marriage in England. My dad performed the hamburger test on my mom, i.e., ordering two hamburgers in a restaurant. My mom ate it, thereby proving she wasn't a vegetarian. Their next date was their wedding the next weekend. They come to Canada, they set up a new life in the suburbs of Toronto. My sister and I were born here. We got super lucky. My parents did all the hard work, and my life didn't hit the skids really until I was in my 20s. I thought I had this, like, I did everything my parents said, right? Like study hard, get good grades, get a job, get married. And it wasn't until I hit a divorce and the loss of my closest friend to a suicide. And those two things happened in like 3 days that I was like, cast out to sea. I was like, I couldn't get purchase on my life because I was in shock. I was in overwhelm. I didn't have the skills to try to cope with anything as sad and as kind of challenging as this. And that's when I started. This was 15 years ago. I started writing a blog called 1000awesomethings.com, where every single day for 1,000 straight weekdays, although flash forward, it's now been 18 years and I'm still doing it. I wrote
Mm.
about one awesome thing a day. Just try to cheer myself up. It was like wearing warm underwear from out of the dryer, hitting a string of green lights when you're late for work, playing on old dangerous playground equipment, with the burning hot
Let me know where
slides.
some
And
of that is, man. I can't find it. Everything's plastic with
I
soft
know,
fake bark below it.
we got a couple of them left in downtown Toronto, but yeah, it's like you're not falling off into a pile of cigarette butts anymore. That's for sure.
All right, so I'm going to make you go back a little bit. You've already talked about some of the profound challenges you faced in your late 20s, which I think our audience is going to connect with. But I want to learn a little bit more from your mom and dad. When
Yeah.
when I'm traveling for work,
Hmm.
my team usually book me a car to pick up at an
Hmm.
airport, but almost always I ignore that and I hop into the back of a taxi. And in part, it's because I want to get to know the person driving it. And frequently they are immigrants. I'm deeply moved by those who come to the United States, or in your case, Canada, from a place far away. They left behind the comfort of home or the challenge of home to embark on a new hope for tomorrow for themselves and for their family. And that's your mom, that's your dad. Talk first
Yeah.
about your mom. What's your mom like?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My mom is the youngest of eight. She was born in 1950 in Nairobi, Kenya. So she's alive and well today at age 75. She was born into an East Indian family in Kenya, which was a British colonial country at the time. Her dad had moved from Lahore, India, to help build the railroad. So, like 1920s, 1930s. The railroad through Kenya, for those that know any Kenya history, was like the thing. It was the sort of giant, monstrous project that everybody was kind of behind. And it was connecting Kenya to the rest of Africa and so on. My mom's family was heavily male dominated in the sense that the boys, the three boys out of the eight, they were given all the money for education to pursue like even, high school and then become an engineer, become a doctor. And the
Right.
girls, it was like, you didn't even get high school, never mind education after that. But in Kenya, when you were 12 years old, so my mom was, it was 1962, there was a national exam. It was the British national exam, like whatever the version of the SATs is, but the English version. And my mom got the top mark in the country.
Wow.
And so she was given this thing that her older four sisters were not, which was a free scholarship to Kenya High, which was the only boarding school in the whole country for, at the time, it was for the rulers. It was for like the white colonialists. But because they started that school in 1920, at this time they're like, we gotta open the doors here. So my mom was the first ever brown student at that school. It was the same year that the first ever black student joined the school, and that was Jane Kenyatta. That was her roommate. That was the first president of Kenya's daughter. If you fly to Nairobi, Kenya, you fly into Jomo Kenyatta Airport.
Yes.
So the first brown student, Indian background, first black student, African background. They were roommates. Everybody else was white. And my mom parlayed that opportunity into deep, studious work and eventually became a chartered accountant. The problem is when she became 18 at the end of high school, two things happened all at once. Number one, Idi Amin, dictator in Uganda, country next door, was ordering all the Indians out of the country, and everybody was worried Kenya's going to be next. So there was like massive racial tension and like, I won't call it a genocide, but like it was verging on that. It was like, get all people of one race out of here. And her dad died, and she was very close to her dad. And she was, again, pretty young, 17, 18. So the family ran away from East Africa. They didn't have anywhere to go because remember, Lahore, which I mentioned was in India, got split by the India Pakistan partition, ended up in Pakistan. Her family lost everything through that. Wealth at the time was kept in the form of jewelry and in real estate. And so they went from rich to poor, from Africa to England, and they fled. And that's why her mom kind of married her off very quickly into a guy that had a very valuable thing at the time, which was a Canadian passport.
Mm.
My dad's story is the exact opposite. He came from a very poor family, not a wealthy family. They would never have met. My
Yeah.
parents, the caste system is like rich stays rich, poor stays poor. But they met because my mom was like the new poor. You know what I mean?
Mm.
My mom was like, they'd lost everything. My dad, opposite. His mom died when he was 3 years old, scrapped, saved, studied, helped his dad run a Singer sewing machine shop. He was like ironing shirts at night after school. He ended up working his way, riding his bike to the University of New Delhi. He got a degree in nuclear physics, eventually a master's in it. And then when Canada in 1966 wanted to start to teach physics in high school, they imported teachers. So my dad was the very first high school physics teacher in the school board region east of Toronto that I grew up in, called the Durham Board. And so he just went back to England one summer, met a family friend, and that's how my mom came into the picture. And so thank goodness for all those random series of events happening because it created my life.
You know what? You're a big guy on intentionality and happiness and awesome. And I would imagine sometimes even you, an expert on all this stuff, probably take for granted your life. And when you just ramble through a story like that, it's probably also impossible for you to recognize that your life is anything other than a miracle. Like your very presence, your breath is utterly shocking because it took an awful lot of things to happen perfectly for mom and dad to meet and have that cheeseburger.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know. And you're right. I completely forget that all the time. How could I not? We go through our days, thinking about what time is the pickup going to be and, we're like moving all these little tiny pieces around on our iCals so we can fit everything in on logistics. And you're looking at your phone and seeing if you got a car or if you're taking the taxi when you get to the airport. That's why you are so good at pulling out of people their story. And that's a good reminder. Like everybody listening, this is lucky to be here. Like 110
Mm,
billion people ever have been alive on Earth. And if you're listening to this, it probably means you're one of the, 8 billion people alive today. So you've already won a 1 in 15 lottery. 14 out of every person that's ever been alive is no longer. So just by virtue of being in the alive group, you've won a lottery 1 in 15.
mm,
And if you have the time to listen to a podcast and the circumstances to listen to a podcast, whether that's internet access or you have a phone or you have the time or you have a commute, You're another degree luckier than that. That's another big lottery that you won. And we could keep going down this. 6% of people in the world have any kind of post-secondary education. 50% of people in the world have a job of any kind. So you think about a career, like just having a job. Well, it's one in
Right.
two, you know? So yeah, man, it's so nice to zoom out. Remember the lottery and remember that you've already won.
That's awesome. As a kid, when did you recognize you won the lottery? So I'm going to frame this question as, was there a moment when you recognized that the lottery was actually the ordinary things, not the scratch
Mm.
off ticket and the flight to Vegas, but
Yeah.
just the little things were actually the big things?
Well, I got lucky in the sense that my dad was a new immigrant, and so many of the things he was astounded by, I just took for granted. Like I assumed that everybody was obsessed with the stickers on the fruits at the grocery store. Because my dad never got enough of that. He's like, "Can you believe it?" He's picked up a kiwi, like, show me the sticker. He's like, "This came from New Zealand." He'd be obsessed with that. He's like, "Look at this date. It came from Morocco." He'd always say, he's like, "Somebody climbed a tree in Morocco." And they picked this date off and they climbed back down. They sold it to a guy who put on a truck, who drove it to a dock, who sold it to a guy who put it on a boat, sailed it all the way across the ocean, and we could buy it for a quarter. Like he was always like had that sense of awe about him.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how lucky that was, but of course, most people's parents were born here, I guess, so they always had fruits with stickers on it, and they never thought it was special, right? Whereas my dad was like, I was beaming about stuff like that. And the cool thing was, he also was like ignorant in a good way. Like he would be like, "Where is Morocco?" He's like, "I don't even know where that is." He's like, "Let's get an atlas. Let's like look for this country." He's like, "I don't know where that is," and he'd want to learn with us, and so many things looking back as an adult, I can say, "Oh man, I really wish my parents had taught me how to swim. I really wish my parents had taught me how to speak Hindi or Punjabi." But what they were doing was exposing me to the culture that they were learning at the same time they were learning it. And
Hmm.
now that I'm the age that my dad was when he was raising me, I can obviously see that a lot more clearly.
Outside of mom and dad and your sister, was there a teacher or some type of friend influence who helped shape your path forward? Who was the most influential person to you as a young person?
Stella Dorsman, i.e., Mrs. Dorsman, my grade three teacher, big, poofy, white, curly hair, thick glasses, outside of Sunset Heights Public School in Oshawa, Ontario, an hour east of Toronto, on a cold September morning in 1988. She called my name to be in her third grade class. And I was a tightly wound, super anxious, very quiet, very shy. That's what they'd call me, shy. But really, inside, I was like a pop that you just shook up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it didn't have a spout. No one cracked the thing open. Well, she helped crack it open. She just saw inside me that I had a lot going on somehow. And she just gently, throughout the whole year, I remember, really pushed me out of my shell. Two things stand out from that relationship. Number one, I'm almost tearing up thinking about this. I haven't thought about this in so many years. You did such a good job making me think about this. I transferred schools when I was 10 years old, and at the school grand opening, oh, I forgot all about this. They asked me to like go on stage and accept this award on behalf of the old school to the new school. And it was weird that I'd be asked. I was this quiet, shy kid. But it was her. It was Stella Dorsman from the old school. Like came to the new school and presented me with this award. And I found out later she had asked that I come
Wow.
on stage and receive that. So I had practice. I learned later that I accepted the award and just like held it up above the stage facing me. So like nobody could see the thing. It was like they could just see like the hanger on the back of the thing. I didn't learn that till much later. Like people were like, but I didn't know what to do. So I was just holding it up backwards on stage, like so I could see it. I wasn't holding it forwards, but it didn't matter. The point is that she had kind of pushed me, come out of my shell. And then I said the two things that stood out for me from her. The second thing was in 2010, my first book came out, which is called The Book of Awesome, which was an assembly of that block, 1,000 awesome things in printed format. And in that book, I wrote an entry about her and I called it That Teacher.
Mm.
What's an awesome thing? That teacher, that one teacher you have that opens you up. And it was about her. And from that article, she had been long since retired, free internet, no one knew where anyone was. And she wrote me a letter. And then she came to downtown Toronto and she came to my book launch. And
So
then in subsequent books, if you were to grab this orange book behind me and open it up, there's a blurb from her in the cover. Neil's third grade teacher, Stella Dorsman. So yeah, it all came together in a really amazing way. She definitely helped just sort of like push me out there a little bit more. Like now I'm like on these stages and you think about it, like I didn't talk to anybody
No, man.
for like the first 8 years of my life. I didn't even say a word.
I
It was
admire so much the teachers, whether that's a traditional teacher or a guy in AA or a coach or whoever it is, a teacher, man, who can see within that person in front of them what that person in front of them does not yet see within themselves. And
mm,
that's what your awesome third grade teacher did for you. It's what you're helping others do in their own life. But what a gift it is to see over the horizon what others can't even begin to imagine possible. So you go through third grade, you endure it on to fourth and beyond.
yeah.
What did you imagine doing as you aged through life? What was the goal?
I originally wanted to be a cartoonist. I was obsessed with Garfield comic strips and Archie's and Mad Magazine. And so I was also tracing those at home. And I mastered the art of being able to draw Garfield and try to make cartoons.
Hmm.
But really the life plan for any Indian kid is like be a doctor. I mean, that is just the life plan. It's like, do great work, have a big success, be happy, right? It's like study really hard, get straight A's, be a doctor. In India, it was the most stable, highest income. That was the framing of the word doctor. It was like stable and a lot. You know what I mean? It was like that was the framing of it. Although I will say, I asked my dad once when I was a kid, I was like, Dad, if you say that, everybody should become a doctor. How come you're a teacher? Like, how come all your friends and all the Indian immigrant friends in Toronto that we hang out with, they're all doctors, but you're not? He's like, in my village where I grew up, they got paid the same. Doctors and teachers. Like, education and health was on par with each other. If
Awesome.
you think about that, or what we do in our society today, it was like, health is this like 10 times more valuable than education, but really, education, that was worth a lot and where he grew up. And so, yeah, man, I was trying to do my best, math, science, those type of courses. It wasn't until I got to university or, college that I was realizing I'm spending 20 hours a week in my classes, accounting, finance. I ended up going into business school, but 40 hours a week on writing for Golden Words. Golden Words was the comedy newspaper at Queen's University, published every week. And I would spend hours on it, writing articles, comedy articles, trying to make people laugh. I abandoned the cartooning, but I was still writing, and I became the editor of that newspaper in my last year. Like I said, I was spending twice the time
Hmm.
as my classes on this weekly newspaper. And you have to remember, newspapers were a big deal. Like they were
That was a
like
big deal.
that was the communication mechanism for a whole school. It was through the printed pages of the newspaper. So I'm a bit of a newspaper. I'm a nostalgic newspaper person. I
What
subscribe
year
today to
when did
The
you graduate
Onion.
college? What year?
2002.
Okay.
I'm
Uh,
46 now.
Tell me what was going on in your life that had a profound effect on you when you began writing 1,000 awesome things. What triggered journal entries?
Yeah, so my 20s were like a stew of bad news. I started this job at Procter& and Gamble. I sucked at it. They knew I sucked at it. They put me on a performance improvement plan, which is like, let's come up with a paper trail together so we can fire you, with reason.
That's awesome.
And so I quit before I couldn't handle the shame. I was gritting my teeth. I was anxious. I was stressed. And then I opened up a restaurant, and the restaurant's going pretty good until we open. And I realized like running a restaurant is like a very, very difficult business. Some months I made $3,000, but then the next month I'd lose $5,000. And the next month I'd make $4,000, and the next month I'd lose $6,000. It was like, now we need a new grease trap. Now there was a snowstorm and I had no sales for 3 days. It was like such a complicated, hard, difficult business. And I go to business school again because I'm like, I'm not working. The work thing isn't working for me. I better go back to school. So I go back to school. Now I'm like, okay, right before I go to school, I meet this woman. I fall in love with her. Why? Because she loved me. She loved me. So I fall in love with her. So I proposed after 8 months, like super quick. And I go off to school. I'm going down to Boston. I go to Harvard Business School. I try to see if I can move her down there, and she tries. It doesn't really work out. And we get married the summer between the 2 years, and then we get home, and it's like, now we're getting to know each other. And, when you start to get to know someone after you get married instead of before, uh, it doesn't always go well. And what was happening in our marriage was like, we were like just learning who each other was. We were like in our 20s, and, we're 2 years in, but it's like we'd been in different countries and so on. And at the same time, my best friend, who was Chris Kim, who went to Harvard undergrad and he went to Harvard Business School with me, he was struggling, and I knew he was struggling. He told me he was struggling. He had attempted suicide once, and I was in touch with his psychiatrist. I was in touch with his doctor. I knew all of his medications. I was talking to him like regularly about this, like twice, three times a week. And those two kind of sour situations both came to like the most unfortunate conclusion possible, which is my wife told me after 2 years of marriage now, 4 years together, she's like, I've fallen in love with somebody else. Like, I think we need to get a divorce. And the guy she fell in love with, he also was telling his wife this at the same time. So it was like a double traumatic marriage ending thing. And then Chris, I mean, he basically followed the route of the road trip we took after graduation back from his home. And then I was in touch with his sister, and we were trying to get in touch with them and track his credit card with the police. And it was just a terrible couple of days. And then he took his own life in a hotel room in Colorado. And I was maybe the last or one of the last people to speak to him a couple of days before. And I just lost it. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I'm trying to write this eulogy. I'm trying to process my divorce paperwork. I'm trying to sell my house. Everybody at Walmart, because by the way, I get a job at Walmart for 10 years. I'm working at HR. They're all like, "You look great. What's your secret?" Like, it was like, when you suddenly lose a bunch of weight, everyone thinks it's like an awesome thing. Now we'd probably say, like, which GLP-1 are you on? Back then it was like, what are you doing? Is this no bread? What are you eating? And it was like I didn't even have the ability to talk to people at work about it. I was not comfortable with what was happening inside my body. I was this complete physiological mess. I start writing a blog. Writing had been salvation for me. Remember, I was drawing cartoons when I was a kid. I was working with the school newspaper when I was in college. So I started a little blog. It's called 1000awesomethings.com, just as a place for me to go at the end of every day. I just go there. I would just like go to WordPress.com, I'd log in and I'd try to write something to cheer me up. And if you read those early entries, they were like sarcastic. They were acerbic. They were like, I wrote about fat baseball players because they give us hope. You know what I mean? I was like sarcastic, but then maybe that's why it resonated, because it wasn't like Pollyanna. It wasn't like
Yes, it was
just
real.
puppies and rainbows and
John Kruk was awesome. You're exactly right.
exactly, because the shaky tricep flaps give us the potential, a vision that we could be a baseball player too, right? It's all about and when I grew up, it was Cecil Fielder, you know what I mean? And I was like, I could be Cecil Fielder. I could eat chips and I could play baseball. And yeah, those days are kind of gone though, aren't they? You don't really see that. I see a Husky baseball player anymore, but it's not like what we used to
You
have in
don't
the
see guys
80s.
smoking cigarettes between innings as frequently, that's for sure. You did
So
in
I
the
start.
80s, man.
I mean, exactly. I start this. Yeah, never in chewing tobacco. I start this blog. My mom forwards it to my dad. My traffic doubles. It gets bigger and bigger. I get 10 hits a day, then 100 hits a day, then 1,000 hits a day, then 50,000 hits a day. Then it gets 1 million hits, then 100 million hits, and then I win this award. Most people don't even know this exists. It's called the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences. When I looked up the organization, David Bowie was on the board. I was like, this is like a legit. I go to New York City. I win the award for the best blog in the world. And Martha Stewart is standing beside me, Jimmy Fallon standing beside me. Like, this is my peer group.
Real.
I mean,
Yes.
not really, but these are people I'm with. I get home to Toronto, and now all these agents want to turn that into a book. And so, from the experience of that turning into a book called The Book of Awesome, that's the journey I'm still on, man. Like, that's still the journey I'm on. I'm still writing one awesome thing every single night. It goes out every single night to like 150,000 people over email and social media and all that stuff on my blog, neil.blog. And now, because I've been asked and I've been challenged and on public forums, like I've been on the Today Show and they were like, so you wrote the Book of Awesome. So everyone in America wants to know how you can be happy. How do you teach people how to be happy? And I was like, I have no idea. But I recognized quickly that this is the bigger question. It's not just writing down little moments of awe, though that's vitally important. Gratitude can be a huge change for our brains. Massive. If you wake up in the morning, you write down one or two things you're grateful for, I promise you, you will feel better than you do today in 5 days from now. It's as simple as that. We know it works. Our brains are oriented towards negativity. We got this amygdala, it secretes fight or flight hormones. It's like a bicep curl for your brain, just trying to turn your brain the other way. That is gonna work. So powerful. We can talk about the research on that if you want. But the bigger question is, how do we feel content in our bodies? How do we feel like we can do what we want? How do we have freedom? How do we feel authentic? So I start giving talks. I give a TED talk called the 3 A's of Awesome: attitude, awareness, and authenticity. I start dating again. Honestly, man, it took me a year just to go on online dating sites, another year just to land a second date. Like, I was a bit overwhelming on the first date, I think. Anyway, it didn't work though. I was up for the second date with everybody, but it took me 2 years. So I finally got a second date. I fall in love with this woman who I have a second date with, Leslie. We start falling in love. I'm going slower now. I'm like, don't propose after 8 months. Don't propose after eight. I was like, no, I was falling in love with her. And that today, flash forward, we've been married for over 10 years. We have 4 little boys. And as Leslie, my wife, got pregnant, I wrote another book, a new book, a letter to my unborn child on how to live a happy life. And that letter basically got published as a book called The Happiness Equation. And so
Mm.
I've been on this journey now, 10 books later, books about happiness, about resilience, about gratitude, about morning habits, about evening habits. Leslie and I basically baked in our morning and evening habits into little journals. 2 minute mornings is the thing I do every morning. I will let go of. I am grateful for. I will focus on. And then 2 minute evenings, this little journal we came out with last year, it's just rose, rose, thorn, bud, going around the dinner table, writing down your rose from the day, another rose, something that didn't go well, a thorn, and then a bud, something you're looking forward to. Because research shows you're happier when you look forward to anything. So now I know. It doesn't mean I'm good at it yet. I mean, if I was good at it yet, I'd probably stop doing it, but I'm not good at it yet. I'm in the
Learning.
habit building practice myself of like, if I start my day like this, if I don't sleep next to my cell phone, if I can get out that little journal, if I can close my day with rose with thorn bud, if I can do these little intentional practices, I just know it'll be a better day for me. And as a result, I'll be in your shadow, giving more, sharing more, loving more, showing up as a better dad, showing up as a better friend, responding to the person that sends me an email because they're going through a hard time. I like trying to be very public. I have a public email address. It's neil@globalhappiness.org. Like you, I have a public podcast. I like try to put myself out there. But like perhaps unlike you, as a result, I'm constantly stumbling over things. I'm constantly like, woo, like, man, I had a bad day or I had a bad week or like that was not as good as I thought or I'm struggling with this. And the practice in the community, it lifts me back up. I'm
For
like
sure.
using the energy I get from doing things like this to help myself too.
Man, that's a lot. So I'm going to back up a little bit. I want to first congratulate you on surviving that stage of losing your marriage and losing your best friend, and amazingly not losing your life. Because I think a lot of us might have, and a lot of men who try to do life all by ourselves already, and now we are completely on our own, may not have been able to figure out a way to put their left foot in front of their right. So the fact that you did it blows me away. You begin this little blog and you write one thing and two things and eight things. I'm curious, what was the thing that allowed you to write the ninth thing or the 11th or this 20th or the 29th when no one besides your mom was paying attention? There had to be a
Yeah.
day, man, where you're like, dude, my wife left me because I'm nobody. My
Uh-huh.
best
Uh-huh.
friend is no longer here because I wasn't the friend
Yeah.
for him that maybe I could have been and maybe he needed. So you start taking that blame that's not yours and you begin spiraling if you're not careful. So what kept you going back to the well saying, there's still one awesome thing. I'm going to celebrate it tonight.
First of all, I will also point out the fact that the time I was writing this blog, it was not as challenging as it is today with algorithms, with news media, with social media, where I think if I was in the same boat, it would be easy for me to fall into like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or TikTok. And those algorithms feel so good for the moment you're using them, but they are so seductive. And then you end up looking back and be like, what are the last 2 hours ago? I didn't have that. Twitter was there, Facebook was started, but like the really captivating algorithms weren't there. Thank goodness, because I think
Yeah.
it would have fallen into those traps. And the true answer, honestly, is loneliness, is like loneliness. Like the thing that kept me going was like I had nothing else to do. I had 6 contacts in my phone. And like, it was like my mom, my dad, my sister. Like I didn't know anyone. And when I moved
Your
to downtown
ex-wife,
Toronto,
your best
yeah,
friend, and yeah. So
I'm just saying, like I was newly single in a new city. I moved to downtown Toronto. I'm living in an apartment I don't know anybody in. I got nothing else to do, man. It was like I could do that. I could go for a walk. I certainly wasn't exercising. I certainly wasn't cooking. I was just getting takeout. I was pretty raw. And it doesn't mean that I was going back to the well and writing these profound and punctuated 1,000 word essays about the joy of mastering the art of the all you can eat buffet. That was when I wrote later. But sometimes it was a one liner. Sometimes it was like, getting grass stains. It just means you played really hard in the park. I would just write one just to keep the streak going.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about keeping streaks going is if you can keep a streak going, then it's Newton's second law of motion. An object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an equal or greater force.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to start anything. And then if you can keep it going, it's very hard to stop. And so the only trick was just don't stop. That's all. Just don't stop.
Mm.
Just don't stop. And then eventually it gets to, I'm 18 years into this now. I'm still doing it. Like I'm still writing an awesome thing a day. It's easier now,
So
and I
you,
batch rate them. I might write seven at once, and I program them to go out for 7 nights in a row or whatever like that. But I collect them in my phones all times. Everybody knows I'm always writing stuff down on a scrap piece of paper. People send me suggestions. People email me all the time. People give me comments. So I've created this dented universe in my life where awesome things constantly. I've written over 5,000 now. And the average lifespan is like 30, 35,000 days. So for 5,000 days, I've written an
so
awesome
good.
thing. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good for you. I'm not, it's like my biggest medicine, really.
So I'm curious, you began with one, then two, then
Yeah.
1,000, then the book, then a TED Talk.
Hmm.
In preparing for today's conversation, I watched your TED Talk from 13 or so years ago. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Aw.
Maybe even more in some regards than your incredible polished talk that I saw in Texas. And the
Aw, that's
reason
nice.
why you are so obviously, and I mean this as a compliment, kind of awkward, kind of shy, clearly introverted, and wildly authentic when you're delivering that TED Talk. You are just so clearly Neil. You know what I mean? It is so attractive as an audience to watch a guy who is being so real in front of all of us. It was a great talk. I'm curious, after that talk, though, how did the conversations with others who'd read your stuff and seen that talk,
Mm.
what kind of questions were they asking you afterwards?
First of all, I can't watch it. I mean, like, I know because I'm like, I can't even look at my posture. It was so I was like hunched over because I had just been like hunched over a computer for so long. And I say and ah every two
Beautiful, man.
words. It's hard for me to watch. I've heard Susan Cain say that too about her first talk. The quiet introvert talk. It's like hard for her to watch now because she's become such a great speaker. Afterwards, yeah, a few things. One, there always has been this assumption that because I was articulating the nature of awe and awesomeness and positivity, that I was always like that. And I was really careful to say, like, man, I'm like still working on this
Sure.
stuff. It's hard for me too. I got invited to do a lot more talks. I got invited by the royal family of the United Arab Emirates to like fly over on Etihad Airlines, I think is owned by them. And I go over there and I'm like speaking to the royal family. By the way, the royal family, I thought it was like, okay, it's going to be a room of like 10 people. No,
It's a big family,
like
bro.
500 people, right? Because they have a
Right.
they have a lot of wives times the number of generations. So you multiply 9 wives times like then the next generation has 9 wives. It's like, whoa, there's a lot of people in this room. And so I was like memorizing things in Arabic to like say when I got on stage. So I just had like all these crazy experiences. I had all these crazy experiences. By the way, I did not quit my job at Walmart. So hammered into my head was the like East Indian philosophy of don't quit your day job that I did not quit my day job. For 5 more books, for 200 more speeches, for 8 more years, I didn't quit my day job. The only reason I quit my day job is because get married to Leslie, have a kid, still keep it, still keep it, still keep it, have a second kid. Now we didn't get a divorce, but it was like I was just doing way too much. I was like burning out. I'm like on a
Sure.
book tour for the happiness equation. I'm trying to run leadership development for Walmart, and we have 2 little kids at home. It was like something's got to give. And so I called my old boss, and he said, whenever you're deciding between two paths in life, two career paths, you got to do two tests. Number one, it's the what would I regret more from my deathbed test. And number two, it's the what will I do if it fails test.
Mm,
So I thought, well, what would I regret more? Probably not pursuing the writing, speaking career. And then what will I do if it fails? Well, I guess I would get another job. If you can feel
yeah.
comfortable thinking you can get another job, then by all means go. And I give those two tests to people, the deathbed test and the plan B test, because everybody, people listen, maybe you're just on between two things right now. And I found those two questions very simplifying, reductive, but helpful, and just sort of like helping you figure out what to do.
Neil, you have tons of comments coming online, whether it's DMs or emails or social, whatever it is. I'm curious though, you also probably get comments from folks saying, "Hey, Neil, because of you, I changed this about me, and here's what happened." So rather than talking about someone else saying, "Hey, I love green lights on the way to work too," or the way home,
Yeah.
even better, or a warm blanket or whatever else, a nice clean bath towel. Tell me the story of someone who you met at a speech or someone you met online whose life is different fundamentally because of some advice you gave.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I talk about suicide in my talk, right? Like, and I make the point that our murder rate in North America is 6 per 100,000, and our suicide rate is 18 per
Wow.
100,000. So I say, and it might be a bit reductive, but I say we're 3 times more dangerous to ourselves than anybody else is to us. And the amazing and the surprising thing about the website, thousandawesomethings.com, or the Book of Awesome, was the number of people that came up to me, because I didn't mention on the website or in the book the first time. It took me years till I was able to comfortably talk about it. I didn't mention my divorce. I didn't mention, like, this was not like part of the narrative. I just like didn't mention it. But the number of people that came up to me and said, like, I was going through a divorce. I
Yes.
had just lost my friend. It was like somehow the human language
Yes.
translated through the words, even though I never actually said what I was going through at the time. So a lot of people have come up to me and said, like, this saved my life, or this like took me off of the edge or the brink, or somebody sent me your blog when I was sort of thinking down about myself, or I was thinking nothing good was happening. And I get a lot of those. These days, I will say, I've just been more open about how I'm spending my time. And I'm trying my best to spend more of my time outdoors. I'm trying my best to spend more of my time in nature. We all have NDD, nature deficit disorder, right? Kids are spending like 3 to 4 minutes outside a day. I don't know if you've ever had Ginny Urich on the podcast, like 1,000 hours outside. Like,
Yeah.
she's become a big evangelist for this. And I've gotten really into bird watching, John. That's what I was about to tell you. I've gotten so into birding. I just commissioned this gigantic
And
750
by the way,
square foot.
for the viewers, you see Neil, for those listening, Neil is not 80. Okay, just in case you're like, how old is this Canadian boy? He's not 80. He's prime time mid 40s, very handsome, dark hair, and he's a birdie. And he loves watching birds.
I do. I do. I think they take you out of, I think what they do for us, honestly, is they take us out of our species. You hear all these words, racist, is, all these is. We're also pretty speciesist, when you think about it. We are obsessed with humans, but birds take you out of your species. And it's so stress relieving to not
Right.
think about the worries and ills of humans for a while. It really is. And so
So
now, like today, I got an email from someone saying, like, you got me and my son into birding. I wrote an article, 8 reasons why it's time to become a bird watcher. Maybe we can throw it in your show notes. And I hope some people listening will be like, what? Why? And I'm going to give you the 8 arguments why this is a great solve for you, for your health, for your well being, for your community, for your connection. Unplug from all these social media things, grabbing your attention, feeding you
right.
ads, and shoving, like, 10-second ads for power washers down your eyeballs all day. And instead, join me. Get outside, grab a pair of binoculars. Let's just get out of the world of ads and algorithms. It's exhausting.
Tomorrow we celebrate the anniversary of my father's passing from this world into the next. And so it is a celebration. It's a loss and we miss my dad. But it is a celebration for me when I or frequently my family see a little cardinal. We think of my dad. It
Mm,
just is a little trigger. And so this morning my wife and I were having a disagreement, not a big old fight. We weren't throwing plates, but we weren't exactly seeing eye to eye. And then all of a sudden, from the corner of hers, she sees a little cardinal outside on a chair. And immediately she draws my attention to it. We watch this little thing fighting to get some food in its mouth and then fighting a little bit more and it's moving around. And it honestly, it completely diffused the disagreement. It drew us together. It allowed us to breathe. We laughed about it. We smiled about my father. And it brought joy, it brought awe into this ordinary life of ours. So listen, I'm
ah,
not a bird watcher per se, but
yeah.
this
Well,
morning I
sounds like you
was, and
might
I'm glad I
be.
was.
Yeah. And how do you celebrate your father? Like, when the anniversary comes by, what's that day look like for you?
Well, that's awesome. So tomorrow we're going to go out and celebrate with my kids, his grandkids at the Waffle House, and then tomorrow night I'm taking my wife and mom to one of his favorite Italian restaurants, and we're just going to toast him and tell some fun stories, and I'll probably visit his grave. My father's a strong Christian believer, so I'll probably go to church. And more than all of that, I think the best way to really eulogize someone who is worthy is to model it through your life. And my
Mm,
father, when he was on top of the
mm.
world, was joyful. And when he was on the bottom of the world, he was joyful. And tomorrow and most days, I try to model that same kind of joy in my own life.
Man, that is beautiful. I'm taking that. I'm back pocketing that. I'm not looking forward to when I lose my father, but he's in his 80s and he talks about his death a lot. It sounds like it's next door, for him. He kind of,
Right.
and so, yeah, man, I love how you do that. It's beautiful,
Well,
man.
Neil, one
It's nice
thing
to
I
keep
did with
that
my
tradition.
mom is I interviewed her on our podcast. So podcast 000 is Susan O'Leary, very first one we ever did now almost 10 years ago, because I wanted to capture her wisdom. And at that point, my father had already lost his speaking voice through Parkinson's disease, but my regret is not capturing him.
Mm,
Not so you and your big audience can listen to how great my dad is, but really so I can hear it and then hear it again and share it with my kids. So my challenge, Neil, is
yeah,
grab a mic,
yeah.
grab some tea, go to dad, bring him a
Mm.
kiwi, remind him where it came from, and then spend an hour just visiting with your dad. See what comes out of that.
Yeah, that's a great, great idea. Any specific questions you recommend asking?
Act like you are sitting on his lap as a child again and ask him the questions that that little version of Neil would have wanted to know about India, about the movement over to England, about the cheeseburger
Hmm.
with mom, about their first date, about the travel over to Canada, what happened when they landed. I know there was a buffet that the not-for-profit put in front of your dad, about the
Yes.
time he makes berries with turkey and,
Yes.
just
Oh my
slow
gosh.
play this
What
thing,
great,
man.
great memory. Great
Look,
memory.
I really do respect your dad's. I respect the immigrant's journey. It's not the one I know because I grew up in a white picket fenced house, but it's certainly one I respect, and your father lived it, and there's a lot to learn from it.
And I love that about St. Louis. Like last time I was in St. Louis, I did what you suggest, which is I took three cars around and I had my microphone and I recorded them and I put out a podcast. I don't know if you know this or not on Three
I
Broken
do know this
Clocks.
because we debated and I wish I had been one of your drivers because I would have shared a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
of a different tent than
Oh
maybe the three you got on there.
yeah. I mean, I got what I got, I guess, but I had a great connection with them. I really did. I
Come
still
on
think
back,
about
man,
this.
and I'll drive you around.
Okay.
And so, a final question before I ask you a couple quote that you've written in the past.
Sure.
How do you stay honest about happiness without sugarcoating pain? Like, how do you celebrate green lights and a trip up the Gateway Arch and St. Louis style pizza happy without also acknowledging, yeah, and life is hard.
Ah man. I don't. I mean, I don't really. I just know that is Ah, I struggle. I really do struggle. I really personally actually struggle with happiness. And I have come to view all the work I've done and am doing as little vines, tent trails, reach outs, ladders, boosters, blips, helpful ways to push myself into a more positive state while knowing that my brain's orientation is a little bit has a little bit of a fear has a I have a bit of a fear orientation. I have a little bit of an anxiety profile. I think I grew up tightly wound. I was really nervous and shy as a kid. And so if this medicine works, it's only because I'm saying I'm taking it too. Like this is
Right.
the pill I'm swallowing. You want to swallow it with me? Well, that's kind of the vibe I'm really at here. I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm just continuing to try to make medicine that works for us both.
That's good. So, man, in your talk, I wrote down 2.5 pages worth of notes, including book them on the podcast, so Leary. But here comes some of the quotes that I've written down, either from your books, your podcast, or from the speech where I met you first. Number one, happiness is not something you pursue, it is something you create. Tell me what you mean by that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my point is that everyone's like, okay, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta be happy, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta be happy. Kids tell their parents, I just wanna get a job, go to school, and be happy. But it's the opposite. We have to remember that there's specific habits that we can do. We can read before bed instead of looking at a screen. We can play roast thorn at a dinner table instead of looking at our phones. We can get outside when we're feeling stressed. We can call a friend. We can make sure that we invite a friend for dinner or like say yes to the offer that we get for dinner. We can do all the stuff that grandma told us basically, and then happiness will be the result of that. It comes to us from the choices that we make, not rather the things that we pursue. It's not the result of trying to get a good job and go to a good school and so on. It's more just like doing the little practice every day that push our brain into a more positive space. And then guess what? the great work, the big success that usually comes after the happiness. We like working with those people. We love having those people as bosses. We always want to promote those people. Those people end up being healthier because they're more inspired to like go outside, do exercise, walk around. So everything good happens right afterwards anyway.
Mm. We don't remember days, we remember moments. What do you mean?
Mm. Yeah, it's true, right? I mean, like you think back in your life and you think, oh yeah, like I'm gonna remember the like wide eyes in the graduation stage, the father daughter dances at the weddings, the babies crying in the delivery room. But actually, really, what you remember is the sip of coffee that you had this morning, the way the cream went into the milk, and all those tiny things that actually make life beautiful. If we can pay attention, notice, and in my case, write down and share those little moments, then we can bring joy and enrich each of our days.
One more quote from you, but before I ask it, I'll play off of what you just said there. In 2017, my wife, Beth, and we were in a good place, but not the best place in our relationship together. And so on January 1, I started a journal with the words Dear Beth and just began tracking the beauty of her, whatever that was. I saw her do something. I saw her wear something. We had a fun date together. She took a meal to a neighbor. She wrote a love letter to someone who lost a child or a spouse. And I just saw the goodness in her day after day after day for a year. And I quietly tracked it. And
Oh,
then on
way.
Christmas, gave her that. And our best year together was 2017, I think, because I was tracking moments of beauty in her. And
Wow.
what you focus on, as you know, expands. And it was just a year where I was focused on how awesome she was, and it was impossible to ignore. So I think what you're
Wow,
teaching
what a
here,
romantic you are.
I'm not, man. Get to know me. I gave her a lawnmower one year for Christmas, so I'm no romantic, okay? But I try, and I'm trying to get better. So I appreciate you calling our attention to noticing the little things, the cream in the
Yeah, I mean,
coffee, the leaves on the tree, like the little things are not. So my final quote to you is the simple things are also the most extraordinary things, and only the wise can see them. Let me say it one more time more clearly. The simple things are also the most extraordinary things, and only the wise can see them. What do you mean?
I just think that the culture that we live in is if you happen to pick up a newspaper or see the headlines going by on a screen or, watch the sports scores to see whether or not the Strait of Hormuz is open, like your mind quickly starts to think like this is what's big, this is what's important. It's geopolitical stuff, it's political stuff. But you're only awake 1,000 minutes a day. Everybody is. That's all you get. 1,000 waking minutes a day. And most of those minutes are going to be spent inhabiting your body, connected with your soul, feeling the air, maybe getting your kids dressed when they're running late for school. Maybe it's jumping in the car and seeing your partner filled up the tank. Maybe it's the garbage truck that goes up onto the sidewalk because it's trying to let you by. Maybe it's the lady at the school that lets you in, even though you're just almost at the edge of the drop off window. Maybe, see what I'm saying? Like, if you just don't see all that stuff, then you're missing the whole day.
Yeah.
And so all I'm trying to say by that is that just stop and observe the smaller pleasures. They add up to your whole life.
Mm. Neil, I've loved our time together. We tragically have to begin moving toward the finish line, which is ultimately the starting line for our listeners and viewers. But we wrap every podcast with what we call the Live Inspired Seven. There's seven short fire questions that get our audience, I think, not only tethered to other guests, but motivated to live the message in their own lives. So the first question, what has been the best or most impactful book you've ever read?
On the Shortness of Life by Seneca.
Tell me about it real quick.
2,000-year-old letter written by Seneca in ancient Rome, reminding us that our lives are not short, but it's just how we choose to live them. So yeah, it's out of copyright. So it's 2,000 years old. So it's really easy to find online.
What's one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little boy growing up, but you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
Drawing. I gotta get back into it. You made me think about it a lot today.
Hope you do. If your home caught fire and your children and wife and animals are out safely, you have an opportunity now running back into your home and grabbing one item. What physical thing do you return with?
Yeah, I don't think I'd take anything, honestly. If my family's safe, I mean, I don't need anything else. We can find the pictures again.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous Toronto day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like to be next to?
Mm. Well, I'd love to meet my grandparents. I never had a chance to, really. Three of them were dead before I was born. The other one spoke another language and lived on another continent. So I didn't see her much, really. So I would just love to know them in any capacity. I've really never had grandparents. So I feel like tetherless there.
Mm. What's the best advice you have ever received?
I mean, it's just don't take advice. Don't take advice. Says the answers are all inside you. Put one hand on your heart, one hand on your stomach, close your eyes, take a deep breath, ask yourself the question. When you look for advice, you're really looking for an alibi.
What advice would you give yourself at age 20? So here's this 20-year-old young man off at college. What would you tell him?
I would say don't feel so anxious about everything that you're doing because it turns out that all the mistakes you make in your 20s, the failed businesses, the bad jobs, the lost relationships, those are all in service of you figuring out yourself. Your 20s really are a decade of experimentation. Let it be so.
Neil, it has been said that all great people and authors and dads and husbands and sons and human beings can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
Did his best.
Man, a man who had an awful lot of words, I think has sold a couple million books, did a lot of podcasts, gave a lot of speeches. At the end of the day, we remember that man as he did his best.
I did my best. I've had self doubts. I've had wins. I've had losses. I've had things that have worked and things that have not. And I've done my best.
No, Pasricha, thank you for doing your best and for reminding us that in spite of the times when we did not, that it's not too late to wake up today, to take inventory of where we are and all we are, and to do our best going forward.
Thank you so much, Sean, for having me. I really appreciate it.
My friends, that is my friend. Now you know why. His name is Neil Pasricha. My name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift. Live with your soul on fire.